Hey there, this is Malorian, and this video here is going to be why I got out of 40k. I already just sold my orcs, that's orcs with a K, the space orcs. You saw my last battle report just a few videos ago, and it's literally down to the days before my last army of my space marines is gone. We've already made the deal. I just got to bring the case to them on the weekend, and that's it. I have no more 40k. And so somebody asked the question on the last one there, the battle report, why are you getting out of 40k? Can you talk about the reasons, blah, blah, blah? And so here we go. Here this is. So I think the way I want to tackle this is start with how I got into the hobby and why I'm now getting out of that part of the hobby. And I mean, it really was the first thing I got into. I didn't get into any other game to start off with. It was 40k. And at the time, it was actually just to be playing with my wife's cousin. He, needed somebody to play with him, so I picked it up. I loved the game. He lost interest, so he got out of it, and I kind of kept going. Got a group of my brothers and other cousins into it, and we really got into the game really hard. Got very competitive, and like all the time was just like the killiest list we could ever do all the time, and every little like loophole thing we're trying to really push. And we really loved that part of the game. The whole idea that you could be making these lists to compete against each other. The whole thing where, okay, this counters that, and there's all these different scenarios, different things you had to do. Just to kind of explain on that, there were things where, there were siege scenarios where there's these different bunkers, and it's all about which bunkers you destroyed or captured, and there's all these different things there you're trying to do at the same time. As it went on, later on, that group kind of fell apart. I started playing 40k with other people, and around that same time, though, I kind of diversified, and I got into fantasy and 40k. And, for the longest time, I just liked both games. There wasn't one that was above the other. This is my game I play with horses and arrows, and this is my game I play with tanks and laser beams, right? And it didn't really matter. Over a while, though, it really got to the point where I just liked fantasy more. And that's really the thing where, 7th edition came out, and just the whole idea of it and the bait and flee and how we had to really work the movement phase really was shining out to me a lot more than to, well, okay, I mean, the biggest counter on the other side is I have to make sure that if I'm AP4, I'm going to try and be shooting things that have a 4+ armor to get the maximum effect out of it type thing, right? And a lot of these things I could just shoot across the board. Or, unless you played with a lot of heavy terrain, you didn't really have to do a lot of movement. You just found a good place to park and shoot. And I think a part of that, too, is that the game kind of lost its need to do a lot of these things as a lot of the objectives kind of went away, right? You start bringing things like kill points. So the whole idea then came down to, well, just take as few units as possible, just take the rock hard ones. There'd be no idea like in fantasy where like, okay, there's this little throwaway unit and its point on my list is to die, but it's to get you in position to destroy you with something else. Really, with kill points, it really just kind of really took that away. Like, never take anything soft. Everything is just your hardest units you could, and go and get them type thing. And so that really shifted the game for me. And there's a lot of people that don't really understand what the old missions used to be like. I mean, you should go back there and try and find the missions from, a couple of editions ago, say like 3rd edition, and there was such a diversity of things you'd be doing that really got you going all over the place. And I just found it a lot more enjoyable because there's just tactical diversity, right? Your army had to be ready to do all of these different things. And that was kind of gone then. So, but that's okay. I still like 40k, but I would play my fantasy a lot more. And I just really loved my fantasy. And then 8th came, and some of that was gone. But then I just started playing 8th a lot more for fun. I don't want this to break into like the tactics between 7th and 8th, but that really got into the thing where I still really love fantasy and I was playing that all the time. But 40k, once in a while I'll be playing that with my brother, because to my brother, he still loved 40k, and so I didn't want to really get out of it. I want to still do some events with him. I was still running some 40k tournaments, so it's pretty good for me to stay in the whole game, right? When the latest edition came out for 40k, that's where I had to really ask myself, is this the time to get out of it? Because when you have a big, $100 rule book type thing, and you're only going to be playing, say, 2 to maybe 3 games a year? Is it really worth getting, this big rule book? And for myself, I'm a competitive person. So before, I would buy every single army book. If it came out, I was going to buy it to know what was going to happen. For a while at that point, I'd already said, well, no, I'm just going to do that for fantasy, and for 40K, I'm only going to buy the books for the ones that are my armies. But at that point where there's a big $100 buy-in, it's like, okay, let's do it. So I went into it. I was really looking forward to having lots of fun, and I got to say that fun was kicked in the teeth pretty quick because the biggest killers was Flyers, Forge World, and Allies. And man, I gotta tell you, I mean, it's so hard going into a game and then having it so it's like, oh, you can't deal with this flyer, you just lose. And I think that's a big difference between the two systems, between fantasy and 40K. In fantasy, there always is some way to beat a situation, right? It's like, okay, if this unit is super strong, well, then you can either just try and redirect it, and you can say, like, give up 100 points just to redirect it off to a corner or keep it out of the battle, and meanwhile, you can kill the rest of their army. That's just not possible in 40K. It just isn't. And you also have a lot more impossible situations in 40K where just straight up you can't deal with it with things like high toughness or high armor, right? Whereas in fantasy, oh, you have high toughness, I guess I wound you in a 6. You have high toughness in 40K, I just can't hurt you. I just can't. Don't even roll your dice. A 6 won't do you any damn good. Same thing if you have high armor, right? On the 40K side, okay, even if you're having this magical armor that, is a 1+ save, a 1 still fails all the time. If you're trying to attack a tank or something with really strong armor, it's depending on your strength, just don't even try. You just cannot beat that armor. And so you can get into a lot of skew lists with that, and it just, when you're faced with this, it really turned into kind of like a rock, paper, scissors thing. It just was not very enjoyable. And then the whole flyer thing came in. It's like, well, you don't have any anti-flyers? Well, I guess these Helldrakes are just going to completely destroy you. Or you have only 1 unit of anti-flyers? All right, we're going to destroy that 1 unit, and then we have full reign over your whole list. And it's just, oh, that really hurt. And at the same time, I got to say, like in the past, like I told you, I was used to the whole idea where you're trying to make the strongest list you can, and it's just go for the throat, right? Is this the strongest thing? You go for it. What's the best combo? Okay, let's do this. And when you start introducing the different Forge World elements and allies, these synergies got extreme to the point where it's just plainly ridiculous. And in a way, I can understand where maybe GW did this to actually balance things, because of course it's not like they're going to be updating all the books right away. So only certain ones are going to have flyers, only certain ones are going to have these certain abilities. But if you allow everybody to take allies, well, then that kind of evens the playing field, right? Because if your own army is missing this, you can take it from somewhere else. But really, it just turned the whole thing to being too extreme to me. And then I think you guys already know my feelings on Forge World, where in my mind, GW is the game. Forge World is like the first class of it. If it's an airplane, it's like the plane a whole is like the hobby, but you can pay extra to get stuff, and be first class. So you get these cool models if you want to use your normal ones from GW, but if you want an awesome alternate model, go to Forge World, right? They have these cool, awesome models that you can use to, oh, I don't want to use this giant, I'm going to use this, right? Or I'm going to replace this monster with that. Like, that's the way I'd like to see Forge World being made, but all of a sudden, these things and their rules, also now that they're 40K or whatever approved, you can take them in normal games, and it's just crazy, right? I mean, you start seeing some of these things, and it's just insane. So taking that all together and me not wanting to go to the point and actually, heavily invest into this, because that's what I said before, where I was only going to start buying my own books. Well, now if I want to be competitive, you basically need to have Forge World and allies, and so I need to start buying all the books to get all the allies working. I need to be buying those Forge World books so I have those rules and all their models, and I just wasn't worth. It just wasn't going to go there. And for a while, what I was going to do is, all right, let's just sit on it. I'll play my game or two with my brother a year, and whatever. I'll just leave it. But then the real thing that kind of finally said it's time to go is kind of twofold. One, It was the whole idea where the new Space Marine book came out, which is one of my armies. And again, it was that monetary question. How many games are you going to play with these guys with this book, right? Here's this brand new book, which will probably be out for years. But in all seriousness, how many games are you even going to play? Because at this point, too, my brother is starting to get out of 40K. So I'm not even going to really be playing with him. Maybe he's now just going to be one game a year, right? So that really asked that question. And then there was also the question of space, because I'm playing fantasy. I have lots of fantasy armies. I'm playing War Machine. I have lots of War Machine armies. And meanwhile, I had, oh geez, at the time around 9,000 points of orcs, space orcs, and so I had already gotten rid of some of my like apocalypse stuff, but I still had all the other guys. I had all my Terminators taking up space, all the Space Marines, and it's like, you know what? It's just time for it all to go, and I'm going to leave the hobby. And you know what? Maybe I'll regret it. Maybe in a few years, they'll update enough books so everything's even. They'll come out with 6th edition, and all of a sudden, the whole idea of these absolutes will be gone. Like, oh, you don't have high enough strength for this monster, you just can't hurt it. Or you don't have enough strength to punch this tank, you just can't do anything. And so hopefully that will be fixed, and maybe I will regret it and maybe come back at a later time. But that was really it. Just more the change in the style, and monetary, and just space, because I do other hobbies too, and I know at the same time I might get into more hobbies because people are saying, hey, you should get into X-Wing, you should get into Dust, you should be getting into Flames of War, and all these things take up space, and my basement's only so big. So there you go. That's the why of it. It's not like I'm saying like screw GW, they're horrible. It's not like I'm saying that the 40K system now is not tournament worthy and is not a playable system. It's just something that you have to be fully invested in to really get the most out of it and really be competitive. And I'm just not willing to go there when it's one of my side hobbies. So there you go. Thanks for watching. And if you were one of the people watching my channel for 40K reports, I'm sorry. You probably weren't really anyway, because like I said, it's only about 1 or 2 or 3, maybe at the most a year. So there you go, and we'll see you later. Bye.